Lindsay Clancy and Hayden Panettiere are both in the news this week. Two women, both mothers, in the same window of life. I'm going to talk about how both of their stories share similarities about what's broken in America's postpartum maternal mental health care system. Both were given the same class of drug. For background, Hayden Panettiere became a leading voice in America on postpartum depression, and she lost an endorsement contract from Neutrogena for saying it out loud on television. Lindsay Clancy was a labor and delivery nurse who spent her career helping other women bring babies into the world. And when she needed help herself, she was just discharged from one facility after a single day and denied a higher level of care at another one because she couldn't produce a suicide plan. Here's what I'm going to cover in this video. You'll know the one warning sign that separates a normal, exhausted new mother from a genuine medical emergency, and it isn't just sadness. You'll know why the fastest thing that a doctor often reaches for in that moment may be the most dangerous. And you'll know exactly what to say and do if this is your daughter, your sister, or even yourself going through it. If you know a family with a baby in the house right now, please send them this video. I hope it can help people. I'm Neil K. Shah, a Johns Hopkins and NIH-funded caregiving researcher and the CEO of Cariaya. I've helped thousands of families navigate aging, dementia, and serious illness. I'm not a clinician, but a leading researcher and innovator in caregiving. This is one of the hardest videos I've made because two families are grieving in public right now, and one of these stories is still being decided by a jury. On Sunday, August 16, 2026, actress Hayden Panettiere was found unresponsive at an apartment in Greenville, South Carolina. She was only 36 years old. First responders performed advanced cardiac life support, and she was pronounced dead that afternoon. They completed an autopsy and found no signs of trauma. Police have said no signs of foul play. Now, the cause and the manner of death remain pending. Toxicology can sometimes take days or weeks, and no one yet knows exactly how she died. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles north, in Plymouth Superior Court in Massachusetts, Lindsay Clancy is on trial. She does not deny that she killed her three children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, on January 24, 2023, but her defense argues that she should not be held criminally responsible because she was in the grip of postpartum psychosis and bipolar disorder worsened by the medications she was prescribed. She attempted to take her own life that night and is now paralyzed. Prosecutors reject that, and they argue she was in control of her actions and that she wanted to take her children with her. There is no verdict as of this recording. So how do these two stories connect? Because of one detail that almost nobody is reporting. Both Hayden Panettiere and Lindsay Clancy were on the same type of drug, benzodiazepines, also known as benzos. First, you need one piece of context historically or it won't make sense. In 1955, a chemist named Leo Sternbach was working at Hoffman LaRoche in New Jersey. He synthesized a compound that was the first benzo drug. Nothing came of it, and it just sat on a shelf. 2 years later, in 1957, someone was cleaning out the lab, they found the abandoned compound, and almost as an afterthought, sent it in for testing. It worked spectacularly well. It became Librium, the first benzo drug. Then came its more famous younger sibling, marketed in 1963 under a name that the older generation knows well, Valium. From 1969 to 1982, Valium was the single most prescribed drug in America. At its peak in 1978, 2.3 billion tablets. The Rolling Stones even wrote a song about it, Mother's Little Helper, about a woman running to the shelter of the little yellow pill. That song was a hit well before the drug's usage peaked. By 1975, the government moved benzos to Schedule 4. In 1979, Senator Ted Kennedy held hearings on dependence. The reckoning came, but it came late, because the drug worked so well, so fast, that nobody wanted to hear it. Hold on to that phrase, it worked so well, so fast, because here's how it relates to our story today. Hayden Panettiere wrote in her 2026 memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, published just 3 months before her death. She said that after her daughter Kaya was born in December 2014, she became addicted to alcohol and Klonopin. That's a benzo drug. In Lindsay Clancy's own note on her own cell phone, created in late December 2022 and last modified the day before the killings, she wrote that her Zoloft dose was increased, and afterwards she couldn't sleep a wink, so her psychiatrist told her to stop Zoloft and take Ativan and Benadryl to sleep instead. Ativan is also a benzo. And then she wrote the line that the entire defense rests on. That's when everything started going downhill. She described becoming dependent on medications to sleep. Klonopin and Ativan, different brand names for the same drug class, both benzodiazepines. Both are descendants of that compound found in that 1950s lab cleanup. I want to be careful here because I'm not telling you that a benzo drug did this. In the Clancy case, it's the exact question that a jury might be deliberating. But what I'm observing here is that two women in the same vulnerable window of life were both handed the same type of drug for the same underlying problem, and that problem is the thing that almost nobody actually understands. It wasn't just sadness, it was sleep. If you take one thing from this video, take this. There's a specific kind of insomnia that shows up after childbirth, and it's not the ordinary new parent type of exhaustion. It's the inability to sleep even when the baby is sleeping. A tired new mother often collapses the second that the baby goes down. A mother in the early stage of postpartum psychosis just lies there totally wired hour after hour, night after night, with an infant sleeping peacefully 10 feet away. Look at Lindsay Clancy's text message to her own mother shown to the jury this week. "Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had a horrible insomnia all night." A 2023 review by the American Psychiatric Association put it simply: insomnia is often the earliest and most common symptom of postpartum psychosis, and protecting sleep is increasingly seen as essential to prevention. A 2024 prospective study out of the UK, the Bipolar Disorder Research Network, followed women at high risk. Losing even one full night of sleep around delivery was associated with roughly 5 times higher odds of postpartum psychosis, and 92% of those episodes hit within the first 2 weeks. Back in 2003, researchers Sharma and Mazmanian proposed that sleep loss may be the final common pathway to psychosis in vulnerable women. Here we are 23 years later, and that idea is still standing. Now, there's a trap. It's that "I can't sleep" sounds like the easiest problem in medicine to solve. A sedative fixes it in 20 minutes. Except, sedating someone doesn't tell you why they couldn't sleep. And if the insomnia is the first sign of something much bigger, you've now treated the smoke alarm instead of extinguishing the fire. Now, to be clear, there's no controlled trial proving that sedating early postpartum psychosis will make outcomes worse. But let's go back to September 2015 now. Hayden Panettiere is on the TV show Live with Kelly and Michael. She's 26 years old, she's on one of the biggest shows on TV, and she does something almost nobody was doing at the time. She tells the truth about postpartum mental health. Listen to exactly what she said. When you're told about postpartum depression, you think it's, "I feel negative feelings towards my child, I want to injure or hurt my child." And she said, "I've never, ever had those feelings. Some women do, but you don't realize how broad of a spectrum you can really experience that on." Hayden was raising awareness. The following month, she voluntarily entered treatment. She took a leave from Nashville. She came back. She went again in 2016 and said publicly that postpartum depression had affected every aspect of her life. And in her memoir published earlier this year, she wrote what happened next. She wrote that Neutrogena, a brand that she had represented for almost a decade, canceled her contract. Here's what she wrote about how it felt. "Of all the things I had been caught doing, that being the thing that they drew the line on as immoral was shocking to me. It made me realize and understand exactly what people thought of women who experience postpartum depression." Now sit with that sentence for a minute. She said all of these things, talking about postpartum depression, was what the sponsor drew a line on and canceled her contract. This is a woman who had been in tabloids for years, and yet the thing that ended her endorsement, by her own account, was disclosing a medical condition that affects roughly 1 in 8 American mothers. Now think about what lesson that teaches to every other mother that's watching this. I think the issue is larger than many people realize. A multinational study across 6 countries found that postpartum depression went undiagnosed in about 50% of mothers. CDC data found that more than half of pregnant women with depression received no treatment, and that roughly 1 in 5 weren't even asked about depression at a prenatal visit. So why don't women say something? Researchers have cataloged these fears repeatedly: being seen as an unfit mother, consequences to their employment, and the big one, that someone will take the baby away. Now, is that fear irrational? Not entirely. Expert reviews have found that children of mothers with new-onset postpartum mental illness face nearly the same rate of out-of-home placement as children of mothers with long-standing serious mental illness. So we have a postpartum mental health care system that says it's okay for women to speak up, but then often punishes them when they do. Hayden Panettiere said she lost an endorsement contract. Lindsay Clancy's journals and phone notes, the private record of a woman documenting her own collapse, are now exhibits in a murder trial read out loud to a jury. That's the shame around this topic. That's why many women stay quiet until it's an emergency. And if you study history, it will genuinely surprise you here. In the 1800s, this condition had a different name, puerperal, Puerperal, insanity. It was a major recognized diagnostic category in Victorian asylums. Doctors studied it, wrote about it, and admitted women for it. In 1858, a French physician named Louis-Victor Marseille published an entire treatise on mental illness in pregnant women, new mother, and nursing mothers. There's an international scientific society named after him today. But then the diagnosis kind of just vanished. Open the DSM, the current American Psychiatric Diagnostic Manual, and look for postpartum psychosis as a standalone diagnosis. It isn't there. It exists as a specifier and add-on, but not its own condition. Think about that. A condition that Victorian physicians named, categorized, and wrote books about in the 1800s. In 2026, it's not even a distinct entry in our own diagnostic manual. Google it for yourself. So there are major consequences that result from this. Some psychiatrists can even complete their entire training without even encountering a single case. And when doctors testify, as Lindsay Clancy's doctors did, that they never observed mania or psychosis in her, that testimony has to be weighed against a hard question. Were they even trained to look for it? I'll give you both sides of the issue because the prosecution's position is that her provider saw her repeatedly and saw no psychosis. That's evidence for the jury to determine. Now let me address the objection that some of you may be thinking, that these two women's situations aren't the same. The strongest version of that criticism comes from Dr. Susan Hatters-Friedman, a professor of forensic psychiatry at Case Western Reserve. Her warning is that media only covers maternal mental health when violence is involved, and that the public then fuses postpartum with meaning dangerous. Her fear is that women watching this will see themselves in the headline and decide never to tell anyone because they don't want to risk losing their kids. I think she's partially right, so here's how to handle it. Postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis are not the same condition. Postpartum depression roughly affects 1 in 8 mothers. It's common, treatable, and does not make a woman dangerous. Hayden Panettiere had postpartum depression, and she said explicitly for a decade that she never had thoughts of harming her children. Postpartum psychosis is rare, somewhere around 1 to 2 per 1,000 births. It usually strikes fast, often within the first 2 weeks, and it is a medical emergency, almost like a stroke or a heart attack. The link between these two women is not what actions either of them did, but they were both prescribed the same type of drug, and they both navigated a totally broken mental health system that didn't properly support their own mental health care. And even in postpartum psychosis, the fear is sometimes overstated. The researcher Ian Brockington, who studied these cases for decades, found that the rate of harm to children was under 1% of episodes without overt depression, and he specifically cautioned that the risk has been exaggerated. With prompt and specialized treatment, the prognosis for first onset postpartum psychosis can actually be good. Now here's a number I've been building towards this entire video. In August 2024, researchers Quire, Suleiman, Telsiar, and Liu published a study in JAMA Network Open counting perinatal psychiatrists across the US, doctors specifically trained in mental health during pregnancy and after birth. 21 states have fewer than one perinatal psychiatrist for nearly 5,000 births. Nationally, the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance estimates fewer than 500 such psychiatrists in America that are formally trained in reproductive mental health, against roughly 800,000 women a year experiencing maternal mental health complications. Now compare that to the UK. Britain runs roughly 22 specialized inpatient mother and baby units. These are hospital wards where the mother in crisis is admitted with her infant, so she gets treatment without losing her child. About 22 entire units for the country, around 600,000 total births a year. By comparison, the US has only 5 inpatient perinatal psychiatric programs. 45 states have none. So why did Britain build them and we didn't? Partly it's the law. In 1922, Parliament passed the Infanticide Act, amended later, that created a distinct legal category for a mother who harmed her child, while the balance of her mind was disturbed by childbirth. Britain decided almost a century ago that this was a medical condition the legal system had to account for. That statute is still on the books, but America chose a different path. We chose jury trials. In June 2001, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in Houston. She was convicted in 2002. That conviction was overturned in 2005 after a prosecution expert gave false testimony. At her 2006 retrial, a jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity. That was 20 years ago. 20 years of national attention, awareness campaigns, ribbons, hashtags, and yet very little has actually changed. Even worse, Lindsay Clancy was a labor and delivery nurse. She worked inside the maternal healthcare system. She even knew exactly what was happening to her. Investigators reportedly found the book, Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts, in her home. She told her family that she was sick. She tried to seek help. And according to testimony that was presented, she was discharged from one facility after a single day and denied a higher level of care at another because she couldn't demonstrate that she had a specific plan to end her own life. She even worked in the system, knew the language, and asked for help. And yet the system put her back at her own front door. If that lands for you, please share this video with one other person, because the gap I described doesn't just close through more awareness. We've had decades of awareness. It closes when families know exactly what to do for themselves. So let me end on something useful, because there can be real progress here. We now have treatments that are being built for this. In August 2023, the FDA approved a new pill, zuranolone, once a day for 14 days, with benefits often appearing within about 3 days. Compare that to standard antidepressants, which can take weeks. That lag is often why a sedative gets reached for in the meantime. That's the gap that a fast-acting treatment can be designed to close. But the catch here is the list price is around $16,000 and the access is uneven. For postpartum psychosis specifically, early treatment can work: lithium, antipsychotics, and even in severe cases, electroconvulsive therapy. The determining variable is almost always speed. If there's a new baby in your family, these are the important things in the first 12 months, and especially in the first 2 weeks. Watch for these. These are emergencies, not just moods. The mother can't sleep even when the baby is sleeping. I'm talking about 24 or even 48 hours wide awake. Rapid swings between euphoria and terror. Confusion, agitation, or paranoia that's totally out of proportion to anything that's actually happening. Fixed, strange beliefs, often about the baby. Seeing or hearing things. Any thoughts of harming herself or the baby. If you see those signs, you call 911 or go to an emergency department. The same as if someone feels chest pain and worries about a heart attack. No hesitation, no debate. And here's an intervention almost nobody offers. Don't just ask if you can help with the laundry. Take the night shift. Protect one uninterrupted block of sleep at least 4 to 5 hours by handling a night feeding yourself. Experts increasingly call sleep protection as essential for prevention in high-risk women. Now, there's no large randomized trial of protected sleep as a standalone intervention, but it costs nothing, and everything we know points in the same direction. Also, free resources. Please write these down. National Maternal Mental Health Hotline, 1-833-TLC-MAMA. That's 1-833-852-6262. Run by the federal government, free, confidential, 24/7. Postpartum Support International, 1-800-944-4773. Their trained volunteers will call you back and connect you locally, but it's not a crisis line. In a crisis, call or text 988, free, confidential, 24/7. I keep coming back to one vivid image here. A young woman, Hayden Panettiere, goes on live TV in 2015 with a 10-year contract and everything to lose, and chooses to tell the truth about her situation so that the women watching at home would know that they weren't broken and they weren't alone. She said it simply: it's real, it's not something we make up. She spent a decade telling America the truth about a condition that her sponsors didn't want to hear about. And America was still not ready to catch the next woman who fell. Postpartum depression by itself did not kill Hayden. 11 years, a brother's death, a custody loss, and a long fight with addiction are all sitting between that 2015 diagnosis and this week. But she gave us the warning, and we still didn't build enough things to help people. I think let us not have both of these heartbreaking tragedies go to waste. Maybe we can finish her work. Please send this to one person with a baby in the house, or one person who's about to be a parent or even a grandparent, and tell them, watch out for the sleep, take the night shift, know the numbers. Awareness by itself doesn't save anybody. Showing up does. I'm Neil K. Shah, and let's take better care of each other. Thank you.